My husband once told me he'd found someone new. He said it so casually, like mentioning he bought a new shirt. I remember the way the sunlight hit his face that morning, calm, guiltless, as if he wasn't breaking 10 years of trust with a single sentence. Myra makes me feel alive again, he said, without even blinking. That was the moment something inside me froze, not shattered, not exploded, just stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just looked at him and smiled, a small, tired smile that must have confused him. Because he didn't know what that smile meant, not yet. My name is Ave, and this is not a story about heartbreak. It's a story about realization, silence, and justice, the kind that doesn't need blood or shouting to be heard. For years, I was the quiet one in the marriage, the planner, the listener, the understanding wife who always fixed what he broke. Maybe that's why he thought I'd quietly fade away this time too. But you see, people like me, we don't explode. We calculate. That morning, when he told me about Myra, I didn't ask questions. I simply said, "Thank you for being honest," and excused myself to make coffee. My hands didn't tremble. My mind, however, was already writing a new story, one where I didn't end up the victim. I spent the next few hours watching him pack a small overnight bag. He hummed a tune, something cheerful, and left without looking back. The door clicked behind him, and I stared at it for a long time, memorizing that sound. It wasn't the sound of an ending. It was the sound of an invitation. Because what he didn't realize was that while he thought he was walking into a new life, before everything fell apart, we were that couple people looked up to. Friends used to call us the perfect pair. We met in college. He was the loud one, always surrounded by people, and I was the quiet girl who preferred watching rather than speaking. Somehow, he noticed me anyway. Maybe it was because I laughed at the wrong moments in his stories, or maybe because I was the only one who didn't try too hard to impress him. His name was Daniel. Back then, love felt simple. We shared cheap coffee, borrowed time, and impossible dreams. He'd talk about starting his own company someday, and I'd listen, imagining us growing old in a small house by the sea, one with a garden, a dog, and mornings filled with laughter. When we got married, it wasn't a grand wedding, just family, a few close friends, and a promise whispered under the scent of white lilies. No matter what happens, we'll always be on the same side. For years, it felt like we were. Our mornings began with quiet rituals. I'd pack his lunch while he scrolled through the news, humming softly. He liked his coffee black, strong enough to wake the dead, he'd joke. I liked mine with a hint of cinnamon. Small things like that made us feel connected. He used to leave little notes on the fridge. "Love you, sleepyhead." Or "Dinner date tonight, same place?" And every anniversary, he'd buy a single red rose. He said it reminded him of the first time he realized he loved me, in a bookstore, when I tucked a red bookmark into his hand and said, "This way you'll never lose your page." But love, I've learned, doesn't disappear overnight. It fades quietly, like music turned down one notch at a time. It started with the late nights. He said work was getting busier, that his startup was finally taking off. I believed him because I wanted to. But then came the excuses, the half-hearted smiles, the tired eyes that avoided mine. Our dinners grew quieter. I'd ask, "How was your day?" And he'd shrug, scrolling through his phone, saying, "Same as always." The fridge note stopped. The red roses never came. At first, I told myself it was normal that all marriages settle into silence after a while. But then there were things I couldn't ignore. He changed the passcode on his phone. When I asked why, he laughed. "Company policy," he said. A strange answer for someone whose company barely had 5 employees. He started taking calls outside, in the hallway, in the car, even stepping into the backyard at midnight. When I walked in once while he was on the phone, he jumped slightly, smiled too quickly, and said, "Just work stuff, Avenue." But the lie didn't fit in his tone anymore. Our bedroom, once filled with warmth, felt colder, like someone had opened a window I couldn't see. I started noticing the absence of him more than his presence. The way he'd face away from me in bed. The way his laughter faded when I entered a room. I tried to bring us back, planned small surprises, cooked his favorite meals, suggested a weekend away. He always said, Maybe next time. And still I stayed patient. Because love, even when it's dying, still begs to be saved. Then came the evening that changed everything. It was early spring, one of those calm evenings when the sky looks painted in soft gold. I was cleaning up after dinner when I noticed something strange. Daniel's laptop was open on the dining table. He rarely left it unattended. On the screen, an email draft was open. The subject line read, "To Myra." The message wasn't written yet, just a blank page waiting for words. But the name alone made my pulse quicken. Myra. I stared at it for a long time, trying to convince myself it could be anyone, a client, a colleague, a friend. But my gut whispered otherwise. Just then, I heard his footsteps approaching. My fingers hovered over the trackpad, but before I could close the screen, he entered. His smile froze for a split second, the kind of pause only guilty people make, then softened. Looking for something, he asked, his tone light, but his eyes sharp. I shook my head. Just cleaning up. He closed the laptop quietly and kissed my forehead, too gently, too calculated. Don't wait up tonight, he said. Might be late. As he left, I stood by the table, staring at the faint reflection of my face on the darkened screen. That was the night I realized something had already left our marriage long before he did. And the woman named Myra was about to become a name I'd never forget. The night I found out the truth, it wasn't through drama. It was through silence. It was raining outside, that soft, steady kind of rain that turns everything gray and still. Daniel had left for another business trip, and the house felt emptier than usual. His absence used to ache. Now it just hummed in the background like white noise. I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard his phone buzz on the table. He'd forgotten it, the one thing he never forgot. The screen lit up with a message preview before fading to black again. For a moment, I just stared at it, my hands frozen over a half-folded shirt. Then it buzzed again. This time, I saw the name. Myra. My breath caught, and before I knew it, I was holding the phone. My reflection stared back at me in the black glass, tired, small, hesitant. I told myself I wouldn't open it, that I would wait, that trust still mattered. But curiosity and pain make a dangerous pair. My thumb moved on its own. The lock screen had changed, but not completely. The code was the same as his birthday, with one extra digit. It took me 3 tries to guess it. The 4th time it opened. I wish it hadn't. Her messages filled the screen, bright, affectionate bubbles that didn't belong to me anymore. Words I used to hear every morning now belonged to her. Miss you already. Can't stop thinking about last night. Wish she'd find out, so you could finally be free. That one hit like a quiet explosion. I didn't cry. I just sat there, scrolling through their digital love story. Photos from hotels, secret trips, late-night calls labeled as client meetings. There was even a selfie of them together. Her head rested on his shoulder, both smiling like they'd found something pure. Except it wasn't pure. It was theft, not of love, but of truth. For a long time, I couldn't move. The rain outside blurred against the windows, and I remember thinking how strange it was. The world still looked so normal when mine had just been replaced by someone else's reflection. Eventually, I placed the phone back exactly where it was.
No confrontación.
No text.
No storm.
I walked into our bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked around. Everything felt staged now. The neatly folded clothes, the untouched pillow, the photo of us smiling on the nightstand. The life we built had turned into a prop, and I was the only one still playing my part. I lay down and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. In my mind, scenes kept replaying. The missed anniversaries, the tired excuses, the half-hearted touches. It all made sense now. Every silence was a sentence I hadn't learned to read yet. When the clock struck midnight, something inside me shifted. The pain was still there, raw and deep, but it began to take shape, not as grief, but as clarity. I realized I didn't need to scream or beg. I didn't need to prove I was right. Because in that moment, I saw him for what he really was, not a man in love, but a man who traded loyalty for excitement. And I wasn't going to be the woman who fell apart because of that. I stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked at myself. My face was pale, but my eyes looked alive in a way they hadn't in months. That was the night I whispered to my reflection, I won't fight back in anger, I'll wait. Because anger burns fast. But silence can destroy slowly, beautifully, and completely. The morning after I discovered the truth, I woke up calm. Not numb, calm. The kind of stillness that comes when pain burns itself into focus. Daniel thought I'd crumble. He thought the silence meant surrender. But what he didn't know was that silence in my hands was strategy. I started observing. Every word, every habit, every new pattern. People reveal everything when they believe you're not looking. His business trips suddenly became predictable. Every other weekend, same 2-day schedule, same excuses. His emails were full of vague phrases, client meetings, urgent collaboration, confidential. But something was off. The language felt too rehearsed. I began with the simplest thing, his laptop. He'd changed his password months ago, but one night, while he showered, I noticed him type it. My reflection in the mirror caught the faint movement of his fingers. I remembered the rhythm, not the numbers. Later, I recreated it on my own laptop's keyboard until it felt right. It took me 3 days, but when the screen finally unlocked, it felt like unlocking a confession. The inbox was clean, too clean. Deleted folders, wiped call logs, hidden traces. But people like Daniel underestimate digital dust. In one of his cloud backups, buried deep, were receipts. Hotel bookings. Restaurant bills. 2 names, repeated side by side. Daniel and Myra. Each file was a small wound. I didn't save them immediately. I studied them. Where, when, how long. I mapped his lies like a detective tracking footprints. Then I started collecting proof quietly. Screenshots. Copies of receipts. Call histories. A pattern emerged, one that tied him not just emotionally, but financially, to her. Payments sent to her account under consulting fees. That's when I realized his betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional. His company's funds were being siphoned. He was transferring money from the joint business account into one labeled under her name. That changed everything. I needed confirmation. So, I visited an old friend, Liam, our former accountant. We hadn't spoken in years, but he'd always respected me. Over coffee, I asked casual questions about Daniel's company. He hesitated, then sighed. Ave, something's not right with his ledgers. Money's been moving around strangely. I thought you knew. I smiled faintly. I do now. From that moment, every move became calculated. I started documenting, timestamping, and organizing everything into a private folder. But I didn't want to destroy him out of vengeance. I wanted to dismantle him with precision. The next step was Myra. I didn't know much about her yet, except what I'd seen, the name, the face, the tone of her messages. She worked in marketing for one of Daniel's clients. I found her LinkedIn profile, then her Instagram. A perfect feed, curated smiles, motivational captions, expensive dinners tagged client dinners. Through her posts, I built a timeline. Every time Daniel claimed to be at a conference, she posted a photo from the same city, same hotel aesthetic, same time frame. Their stories synced like clockwork. It wasn't jealousy that I felt, it was fascination. The way they'd built a fantasy on top of my reality. I bought a small voice recorder, the kind that fits into a keychain. I slipped it into the car's glove compartment. Every time Daniel drove to the office, the recorder captured his calls. I didn't listen right away. I let the files collect like quiet ammunition. Then came the banking trail. Using my joint account access, I tracked every transfer, every unexplained expense. I made a detailed spreadsheet, categorized, color-coded, undeniable. Liam helped me trace the funds legally. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me once and said, "You're not planning to confront him, are you?" I smiled.
No.
I'm planning to free him, just not the way he expects. I started making copies of documents, contracts, ownership papers, business registration forms. Daniel's company had both our names on it, but he'd been slowly shifting everything under his control. I moved faster.
Quietly.
I filed to freeze certain accounts temporarily, citing security inconsistencies. It bought me time and confusion on his end. One evening, he came home tense.
The bank called, he said.
Something's wrong with the account. I looked up from the book I was pretending to read. Really? Must be some error. He studied me for a second, searching for guilt. I met his gaze calmly. Silence won again. That night, while he paced in the other room making frustrated calls, I listened to the first voice recording. His voice, soft, familiar, saying, "She has no idea." I smiled to myself. He was right, I hadn't.
But now I knew everything.
Each new detail was another move on the chessboard. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was planning. Slowly, meticulously, beautifully. And as I watched him dig deeper into his lies, unaware of the ground crumbling beneath him, I felt no rage, only quiet satisfaction. Because Daniel and Myra thought they were safe. But they had no idea what was coming. The day everything unfolded began quietly. Too quietly. It was a Thursday morning, soft sunlight pouring through the kitchen curtains, the smell of coffee drifting through the air. Daniel sat across from me, checking his phone, half smiling at whatever message lit up his screen. Myra, most likely. I stirred my tea slowly, pretending not to notice. My hands didn't shake. My heartbeat didn't rush. Because I already knew this morning would end his game. Weeks of planning had led to this moment. I'd filed all the necessary paperwork, sent a few carefully timed emails, and arranged one final meeting. He thought it was a business presentation. It was actually an exposure. I watched him leave, straightening his tie in the mirror. He looked confident, almost glowing, a man convinced he was winning. "Wish me luck," he said casually. "You won't need it," I replied. He didn't catch the meaning. The office boardroom was glass-walled, sleek, and cold, just like the truth waiting to be revealed. Daniel's small company had gathered for what he believed was a quarterly review. His investors were present, along with a representative from the bank. And me, the co-founder he'd conveniently forgotten existed. I entered quietly, holding a brown folder. He looked startled. "Ave, what are you doing here?" I smiled. "It's our company, isn't it?" The meeting began as usual, charts, projections, his practiced voice moving through numbers like a magician performing tricks. But halfway through, I stood up. "Before we continue," I said, "there's something the team deserves to see." I opened the folder. Inside were copies of bank transfers, emails, and hotel receipts, every detail of his secret partnership with Myra, both romantic and financial. The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the projector. "Daniel," I continued, my voice calm, "you've been moving company funds into a personal account registered under Myra Ellis. Care to explain?" He laughed nervously, glancing at the investors. "This is ridiculous. These are private matters." One of the investors, Mr. Clark, adjusted his glasses. "Private matters with company money?" Daniel's jaw tightened. His composure cracked. "Ave, we can talk about this later." I shook my head.
No.
"Later is when you plan to dissolve the company under your name alone, wasn't it? You filed the papers 3 days ago." A whisper rippled through the room. The bank representative opened a briefcase, pulling out a printed freeze order, the one I'd arranged with Liam's help. "Until the matter is investigated," the man said, "all corporate accounts will remain locked." Daniel's face turned pale. "You can't do this." "Oh, I can," I said quietly. "And I already did." For a moment, time hung still.
No shouting. No chows.
Just realization spreading across his face like a slow, painful dawn. He looked at me, eyes wide. "You set me up." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You set yourself up." I just held the mirror. The investors stood, murmuring among themselves. The bank official left with the documents. The sound of his footsteps echoed like punctuation. When the room finally cleared, Daniel sank into a chair, head in his hands. "Ave, please, you don't understand." I was going to fix it. I was going to tell you everything. I walked toward him, stopping just before his chair. You had every chance to tell me. Every night you lied. Every time you looked me in the eye and said you loved me. His phone buzzed again, Myra calling. The name glowed bright between us. I picked it up and placed it on the table, screen facing him. She's next, I said softly. He stared at me, bewildered. What do you mean? Your investors know about her now. The board will contact her employer for verification. She'll lose her job, and the tax authorities will get curious about those consulting fees. He blinked, stunned. You planned all of this? Yes, I said. Quietly, while you were too busy building lies. He stood abruptly, his voice breaking. Ave, please, you're destroying me. I met his eyes, calm and distant.
No, Daniel.
You destroyed yourself. I just turned on the lights. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of city traffic seeped faintly through the window. Then, unexpectedly, I felt something shift inside me. Not triumph, not hatred, but something softer.
Pity.
I had every reason to despise him. But looking at him, small, broken, the mask gone, I realized that vengeance wasn't peace. It was just the final chapter. You once told me, I said quietly, that love means being on the same side, no matter what. I stayed on your side even when you didn't deserve it. But now, I'm finally stepping off your battlefield. I handed him an envelope, divorce papers already signed. You don't owe me anything, I said, except the truth. And you've already given me that.
He didn't speak.
Just stared as I turned to leave. At the door, I paused. The lawyer will handle everything. The rest, I'll let time handle. As I stepped out, the distant sound of a police siren echoed somewhere beyond the glass walls, faint, steady, almost poetic. Outside, the sky was turning gold. I walked through the lobby, my reflection in every pane of glass, composed, unshaken, free. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. Not because I'd won, but because I was done carrying his secrets. When I reached my car, I looked back once, at the building where he sat unraveling, and whispered to myself, almost smiling, they had no idea what was coming. Peace didn't come all at once. It came quietly, like the morning after a long storm, when the sky still looks heavy, but the wind finally rests. In the weeks that followed, I packed up what was left of my life with Daniel. The house felt strange without him, not empty, just honest. Every corner that used to hold memories now held clarity. The divorce went through smoothly. He didn't fight it, maybe because there was nothing left to fight for. Myra disappeared from the picture soon after. I heard she left the city. I didn't follow their stories. Some endings don't need witnesses. For a while, I avoided mirrors. I didn't recognize the woman in them. Calm, still, unbothered. But then one morning, standing by the window with a cup of coffee, I saw myself differently. Not as a victim. Not as someone who'd been replaced. But as someone who survived quietly and wisely. I started working again, took over the company we once built together, and rebuilt it from scratch. New name, new energy, new people who believed in transparency. For the first time in years, I wasn't running behind anyone's dream. I was living mine. Sometimes I still think about Daniel, not with anger, but with a strange kind of gratitude. Because in betraying me, he returned me to myself. I learned that revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it breathes, steady and patient, until justice unfolds in silence. People often ask if I ever forgave him. The truth is, forgiveness isn't always about setting someone free. Sometimes it's about setting yourself free from the weight of remembering. Now, my life is quiet in all the right ways. My mornings start with peace, not pretending. My nights end with rest, not questions. And sometimes, when the evening light hits my coffee cup just right, I smile and think, maybe the most beautiful kind of revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. If you enjoyed this story and love deep emotional tales of quiet strength and poetic justice, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this one.